Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Robert Sports Show. My name is Robert. NCAA Week 7. Alright, Week 6, I went 18-7 straight up picks, 10-15 against the spread, 16-9 on the over-under. Year-to-date win-loss, 108-32. Against the spread, 67-80. Over-under, 75-72. First game, we have the University of Central Florida Knights at 5-0 versus the Memphis Tigers at 4-2. UCF is favored by 4.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 78. UCF is one of 11 teams that are currently undefeated in the college football season. Now, we have 2 from the ACC, 1 from the Big Ten, 1 from the Big 12, 1 from the Pac-12, 2 from the SEC, and then we have the 1 indie team, Notre Dame. We have the 3 teams from the American Conference. Now, from my understanding, the playoffs is for the Power 5 conference teams. So every year we've had 4 of the 5 Power 5 conferences represented at the, except for last year we only had 3 out of 5. Now there's talk of Notre Dame making the playoffs. Well, they're an independent. How can they make the playoffs if they're not part of the Power 5? Why couldn't a undefeated American Conference team make the playoffs if an undefeated independent can make the playoffs? So it's going to be really interesting to see what the committee does with Notre Dame as we go forward, if they stay undefeated. Because I feel a UCF team undefeated in the American Conference, why aren't they even being considered when an independent is undefeated? And we're considering the independent. So we'll see what happens with that. But I have UCF winning, covering the 4.5 and under on the 78. Next we have the Temple Owls at 3-3 versus the Navy Midshipmen at 2-3. Temple is favored by 5.5. I got them winning, covering. I'm taking over on the 52. Next we have the Pittsburgh Panthers at 3-3 versus the undefeated Notre Dame Fighting Irish at 6-0. I think the only way Notre Dame has a shot at even the committee going, okay, we should put them in, they have to be undefeated. But then if the American Conference team goes undefeated, why aren't they considered? But whatever. Notre Dame, it is Notre Dame. They're 6-0. They're favored by 3 touchdowns at home. I got them winning. I got Pittsburgh covering at 21. It's a big number. Taking under on the 57. Next with the Miami Hurricanes, 5-1 versus the Virginia Cavaliers at 3-2. Miami is favored by 5.5 at home. I got them winning, covering the 5.5 and over on the 49. Next we have out of the Big Ten, Minnesota Golden Gophers 3-2 versus the undefeated 6-0 Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State is favored by 29.5. They're throwing some big fucking numbers out here. I got Minnesota covering the 29.5. They'll probably win by like 28. Ohio State will. But I am taking over on the 59.5. Next, we have the battle of the one-loss Big Ten teams. We have the Wisconsin Badgers 4-1. Their only loss is to BYU. Michigan, the Wolverines are 5-1. Their only loss was Week 1 to Notre Dame. Michigan is favored by 7.5 at home. I'm taking the Jim Harbaugh-led Michigan Wolverines here, covering the 7.5 and over on the 48. Next, we have the Michigan State Spartans at 3-2 versus the Penn State Nittany Lions 4-1. Penn State is favored by 13.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 55.5. Next, we have the Baylor Bears at 4-2 versus the 5-1 Tom Herman-led Texas Longhorns. Texas is favored by 14.5 at home. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 61.5. Next, we have the undefeated West Virginia Mountaineers at 5-0 versus the Iowa State Cyclones 2-3. West Virginia favored by 6.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 57.5. Next, we have the Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles at 2-2 versus the 5-1 North Texas Mean Green. The Mean Green are favored by 8.5 at home. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 59. Next, with the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs 3-2 versus the University of Texas San Antonio Road Raiders 3-3. The Bulldogs are favored by 13.5. I think the Roadrunners will cover the 13.5. Bulldogs win over on the 48.5. Next, we have the Army West Point Black Knights 3-2 versus the winless San Jose State Spartans. Army favored by 14.5. Army strong. They win. They cover over on the 55.5. Next, we have the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors 6-1 versus the 3-3 BYU Cougars. BYU is actually favored by 14.5 at home. I'm giving the 14.5 to Hawaii. So I got Hawaii winning. I give them the 14.5. I have BYU covering the 14.5 and over on the 54.5. Next, with the Toledo Rockets 3-2 versus the 2-4 East Michigan Eagles. Toledo favored by 1.5. I got them winning, covering over on the 63.5. Next, the Ohio Bobcats 3-2 versus the Northern Illinois Huskies 3-3. Huskies favored by 4. Taking the Husky over the Bobcat, covering the 4 over on 55.5. Air Force Falcons 2-3 versus San Diego State Aztecs 4-1. Aztecs favored by 10 at home. Get them winning, covering, and over on the 45.5. Next, with the UNLV Running Rebels, or UNLV Rebels 2-3 versus the U-Haul State Aggies 4-1. The Aggies favored by 24.5. I have UNLV covering the 24.5. Aggies winning, and then over on the 63. Next, the Boise State Broncos 3-2 versus the Nevada Wolfpack 3-3. Boise State favored by 17.5. I got the Wolfpack covering the 17.5. Broncos winning and over on the 16.5. Next, we have the battle of the one-loss Pac-12 teams. We have the Washington Huskies 5-1 versus the Oregon Ducks 4-1. Huskies favored by 3. Husky over a Duck. I mean, come on, really? I got the Huskies winning, covering, and under on the 58.5. Next, we have the Colorado Buffaloes 5-1 versus the USC Trojans 3-2. Of course, the Buffaloes going to win that. USC is actually favored by a touchdown at home. I'm giving that touchdown to the Buffaloes. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 57. Next, we have the Tennessee Volunteers at 2-3 versus the Auburn Tigers 4-2. Auburn is favored by 16.5. I do have the Tigers winning. I got Auburn. I got the Volunteers, Tennessee covering the 16.5. I'm taking under on the 47.5. Next, we have the Georgia Bulldogs, undefeated, 6-0 versus the 5-1 LSU Tigers. Now, this is a matchup. This could be the matchup that we have Georgia get their first loss of the year, and then LSU go 6-1. Both these teams would be 6-1 at that point. So that could really affect what the committee does and what happens in the SEC. But Georgia favored by a touchdown. I actually have LSU covering that. I think it's going to be like a field goal game. Maybe wrong with that, but I do have kind of a close game. And I have Georgia winning, LSU covering the 7, and taking over on the 15.5. I'm expecting kind of like a 28-22 kind of game, or 38-30. 3 points. So wow. So like 38-35, that kind of game. Next, we have the Missouri Tigers at 3-2 at the Alabama Crimson Tide 6-0. Bama is favored by 28.5. 28.5 is what the favorite is. Wow. On the average, Alabama is scoring 40 more points a game than they're giving up. They're scoring 56 a game, giving up 16. I'm having Mizzou cover the 28.5. I just can't see it being that. Crimson Tide win, obviously. Mizzou covering the 28.5. I'm taking under on the 74. This is going to be one of those games that people are going to look back on and go, oh my God. What if? Just that 1%. What if the Missouri Tigers went in to Tuscaloosa and upset the Alabama Crimson Tide? What would Drew Lock's stock go? What would people think of the Missouri Tigers? Would it change the national reputation of them? I'm in the St. Louis area, so I know what the Missouri fans think. what about the, around the league, around the college football? Wow, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm still picking the Tide. I'm just saying, what if? Next, with the Appalachian State Mountaineers 3-1 versus the Arkansas State Red Wolves 3-2. Appalachian State favored by 10. Due to them winning, covering, and over on the 16.5. And then the Troy Trojans 5-1 versus the Liberty Flames 3-2. Or 2-3, excuse me, for the Flames. Troy's favored by 9. I get them winning, covering, under on the 66. And last but not least, the South Florida Bulls 5-0 versus the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes 1-4. The Bulls favored by 7.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 62.5. All right, so that's going to wrap up Week 7 of the NCAA college football season. We have 26 games here we just did on Robert Sports Show. How many of those 11 teams will remain undefeated after Week 7? We'll find out on Sunday. As always, thanks for watching Robert Sports Show, and don't just have a great day. Have a spiffy day. Robert Sports Show, your YouTube leader in sports channel content.